Good afternoon, everyone. You're listening to My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, KHTS. I'm your host, Jazmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my annoying dad and co-host, Alex Urbina.
I'm now annoying.
I'm calling him out because before we started the show, we got into a little argument.
So just so you know that if and when you want to be affectionate with your kids and like try to tickle them, all of a sudden we become annoying.
Yes.
Stop, Dad. Why are you like that?
I don't want to be tickled right about I'm about to start going live on the air.
Okay, so if I want to show physical affection, what's the best way to do that?
Maybe a hug later.
when you want
when it's convenient for me.
When you want it. Yeah, I got it.
Anyway, so today we're talking about disconnected parenting, which is actually kind of ironic because for me, I think a lot of disconnect comes from lack of, one, attention, and two, lack of affection. Or I find that if you're not actually physically near someone, it's easy to be disconnected with them. That's why, stereotypically long distance relationships don't work, because you're not physically close to someone or connected to them. And I think the little ticklings and the hugs and, pushing your kid around, messing with them is kind of what makes parents connected, because it's a little way to say, hey, I acknowledge you, I love you, and I see you, even though, I joke that I'm annoyed by it, but I know what that means. You're not tickling me because you want me to laugh right as soon as I get on the air. You're tickling me in acknowledgement that you see me and that you're here.
Yeah, it was funny because I didn't even realize why I was doing it, but like when I poked you, it was almost like to let you know, like, it's like, ooh, we're going to go live. Like, I'm excited. It means so many things. I'm so excited that we're doing this together, or, look, we're going to go live. It's just there's symbols to let you know that, I appreciate you and I'm glad you're here. So a lot of times physical touch can just be a connection to make a point that's not verbal.
Yeah. And I know that I get annoyed by it. I mean, I was tagged by it literally when we started the show. But to be honest, if you weren't doing those things or showing any type of affection that's connecting us, then we would be a disconnected family. And you're kind of the only one that constantly will do stuff like that. And then every now and then, like my sister or something. But my mom's not, really that physically affectionate or anything like that. And I think that if she were to, in my experience, if she were to do those little ticklings and stuff, I would go, this is weird. But if she kept doing it, I would.
So if she did it, she's weird. If I do it, I'm annoying.
Yeah, because I grew up with you acting that way. I grew up with you messing with us and tickling us and showing affection to us. Where I wouldn't necessarily say my mom's like that, where she gets under your skin and tickles you and bugs you. But if she were to start doing that, it would be weird in the beginning, but then it would be cute, and it falls into, this is my mom being affectionate with me. So it's not too late to start with your kids, to start randomly, showing them some attention and some love and affection. As weird and awkward and uncomfortable as it may feel in the beginning, probably, who knows, for the first 2 years, it could be awkward for you. But it's only awkward if you continue to feel awkward, because if you're coming from a loving, affectionate, compassionate place, then your kids don't feel awkward that long. It'll go away.
Yeah. As you were talking, I just thought of a scenario that happened a couple of days ago. I was on the move in the morning, and your sister, I guess, was up all night, studying in the kitchen on her laptop or in her books. And then she went to bed and then got up before me and was still there with her headphones in her ear, and she was just deep in her subject, in her studies. And I was running a little late, so I was getting my stuff and grabbing something. And I remember walking past her, and before I got to the door, I remembered how much I've been disconnected from her. So I walked back over to her, and I leaned down next to her, like near her ear. And I know she felt my presence, so she took her headphones out of her ear because she thought I was going to talk to her. And I just leaned in and gave her a kiss on her forehead. And her face lit up, and she goes, and when her face lit up, she goes, "Oh, Dad!" And she just kind of opened up and started sharing how, she goes, "I'm almost done with school," and I was like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you." But those little moments, like, I have to keep reminding myself to keep plugging in. I have to keep reminding myself to check in, and I gotta always be on alert to notice: am I giving you guys enough attention? Am I acknowledging that you're there? Am I being present and recognizing those moments? Because if not, life can pass me by, and we suffer silently, and just know that our kids are suffering silently, and they don't know how yet to give themselves permission to say, hey, I'm drowning, I need help.
Yeah, and I love that story because there's a million different ways that could have played out. Her being up all night and being, exhausted, and, she's going through finals week and everything right now. If you were to have done anything different, like actually spoke to her and said, hey, do you think you could do this today? Or even saying, hey, how's it going? How's school? All of that, those things could have been triggers for her to say, I'm tired. I've been up all night all the time for this.
Yeah.
Put her earphones back on, be in a bad mood. You leave the house, and, you guys are both in bad places now. I think as parents, I don't want to say we because I'm not a parent, but as parents, you guys tend to try too hard sometimes, and obviously there is no trying too hard, for parents, but sometimes you're doing too much is what I'm trying to say. Maybe you need to take a step back and stop doing so much and start being. And I know that's a concept that you talk about constantly. That's like what your main book is about, is basically stop being a doer and start being a beer. And I think once parents start grasping that concept, it's a really complicated concept when you are analytical and you think about it too much. But I feel like if we were all coming from that place, even the kids, even us as kids, we would have a completely different relationship. We would all be just connecting and not saying so many words that were stepping on each other's toes, making each other upset. I feel like a lot of the time where, for me, disconnect and attitude comes from, for me as a teenage girl or a young adult, is sometimes you guys talk too much. You say too many words, and it tags me because, for me, you're not saying it in a powerful way that's empowering me. It's more, it could be in a negative way. You didn't do the dishes today? That's, instead of, hey, didn't I ask you to do the dishes? Do you think you could do them after dinner? That's different than the way, parents are probably saying it. So I think one of the things you as parents, if I could give advice, would be to recognize that you're using words that are tagging us, and that's how you get the attitude, and that's how you get all the disconnect.
But it's not even just the words, but that's great insight. But I'm going to piggyback on that. On top of the words, it's the tone.
Definitely.
So the way you just gave that example was two different tones. You said the same words, just do two different tones. So there's, do you think you could do the dishes today? Right? It's the pitch. That tone implies, again, this is perception. It's the other person, how they're receiving it. It implies that there's a hint of frustration in that other person, that you should be doing the dishes. And then therefore that's how you interpret it. And then it's a common response as a reaction to go, well, it's not my job. I mean, all you guys are doing is you just keep tagging each other to the higher level. And it just takes one of us to go, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. If I came off like that, that's not, how I meant to have it be portrayed. What I mean to say is, and a lot of times, that's a learning curve. I still haven't even practiced the art of that, but I'm glad that we're having the conversation, because this is how I get to learn. This is how, we get to learn, is having these discussions and paint these scenarios where we can be a lot more present and more aware of our tone when we're saying it. And it just takes an awareness. So let's say, I think the other night you were excited, you were making popcorn, and there was popcorn all over the floor. And I was like, I told your mom, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna call Jazz and ask her to come, clean up her mess. And she looked at me, she smiled, she put her head down. And I knew that was like, good luck, So then when I called you, I was like, hey, can you do me a favor and come clean up your mess? And you're like, yeah, I'll be right there. And then you hung up. And it was like, it was like, I tried neutral, it's try all different ways. It's just, it's more about the mindset of being conscious and aware, and also, knowing what other people's triggers are too. Like if I know you're in a bad mood, it's like, ooh, okay, let me try to say it in a more loving way, a more invitational way, or more neutral, rather than allowing my frustrations to come up and having that undertone be driven with the words.
All right. And I think for me too, a lot of the times I get really frustrated with I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say common sense or like common knowledge, but I remember when you called me, in my head I thought, how am I going to clean up the popcorn when the popcorn machine's hot? I couldn't clean.
No, I think your response. Well, no, I think your response was, if you gave me time to. It was
for
almost
it to cool down. I was like waiting for the machine to cool down, because you can't wash it when it's hot.
Yeah.
So anyways, I said something like that, where in my head I was thinking, duh, you can't, but I know that because I read the instructions on the machine, and you probably haven't used that popcorn machine in 10 years. So for me, it was like, duh, don't you know that? Instead of taking a second and saying, okay, I will clean it when the machine cools down or whatever, and hanging up. But I was annoyed. I was in a fine mood before you called. So I was annoyed that in my head, oh, he didn't use any common sense, or, oh, how dare he think I was just going to leave the mess there when I really wasn't, kind of thing. So I think for me, that was a trigger, not having an idea of me as leaving the mess there. So like you said, sometimes it's not even, because you said it in a very positive, reinforcing way, where I didn't feel like, I was in trouble or anything, but I was already tagged because I was offended.
Got it. And for me, in my thinking was, all right, well, it's been a couple hours.
It was like 20 minutes, but go on.
So in a couple hours, and to be honest with you, I didn't even think of it being hot or not. I just, saw you go to your room. So in my mind, again, this is where we make assumptions, right? I made the assumption that you were done for the night, and I looked and saw the popcorn on the floor and all that stuff, and I was like, maybe I should call her and just remind her. So, but I just, I wanted to point out that I literally told myself, and I had to have that self-dialogue with myself to say, okay, when you call her, say it in just a neutral way, or more as a reminder, rather than, having any kind of hint of undertone of either being frustrated or annoyed, or, and I wasn't. It was just more of, just dad doing dad stuff.
And one thing that I feel like we always talk about, and I just want to reiterate, is that sometimes us as kids, we don't respond the way that you hope we're going to respond or think we're going to respond. So maybe don't have an expectation, or don't expect so much from us, so that way you won't be offended or let down or hurt when we don't respond the correct ways. So for example, if we always talk about, if someone's being affectionate with you and I'm pushing you off, flicking your hand away, no, dad, leave me alone, don't be offended so much so that you're never going to do that again.
No, absolutely. And that's what I'm practicing now, is to give you the space to respond like that. If you're frustrated or annoyed, or you're, Dad, if you just gave me a chance to do it before you telling me, or whatever, or whether it's dramatic or whatever, I'm practicing how to not take things personal. And I also coach this with some of my clients, but I'm really coaching myself as well in my coaching sessions, is not to take things personal. When you get upset or you get annoyed or you respond in a certain way, that's a dysfunction on your part. That ain't got nothing to do with me. But isn't it weird how the way you respond, I allow it to hit me or affect me, or I interpret in a way that rubs me the wrong way. And it's like we give up our power to each other by expecting someone to respond in a nice way, or in a, like, what did I expect? For me to go, hey, can you come pick up this pocket? Yes, Father, I will be right there. I think we have this illusion that, our kids are going to be excited that we called them on some things, or we're holding them accountable, or trying to make them be responsible for some of the things that they've done. And it's not always going to look like that. You're going to have kids, that are going to, be upset or annoyed or angry that they have to do that, or that you're reminding them, or they're going to make up their own stories like, my dad never, lets me, choose to do it when I want to do it, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So what do you think, for me, like I had said in the very beginning, the number one thing that I think disconnects any relationship, not just parent and kid, is the lack of actually being physically with that person or affectionate or whatever. So what do you think the biggest disconnect is between parents and their kids?
I think physical disconnection is a big one. It's a big component. But I also think that another component from really being connected to your kids is through eye contact. I really believe that because we're so busy and we live in a busy society, especially if your parents are business minded or entrepreneurs, or, they're always up in their mind thinking about, how to handle problems tomorrow, or make more money, or pay bills, or whatever it is, that one, we're not being present. And if we're not present, we're not connecting with our eyes. Eye contact is powerful, and it's important. When you lock eyes with somebody, it's a symbol of saying, hey, I see you. And the other person gets to see themselves being seen or recognized or noticed. And what happens is with our eyes, we validate each other. We validate your presence. I acknowledge that you're here with me in those moments. And I think that in a fast-paced society, we're passing each other in the hallways, and our heads are buried down into our phones or our computers or our books or whatever it is that we're focused on, that we're not really stopping long enough to make eye contact with each other. And I think that has us disconnected as well. And if we just made more conscious effort to really just look and see each other and just practice the fundamentals, I think that would connect us a lot more. And I think that more and more as we become more unconscious and more egoic, we don't really see each other. We look at each other, but we don't see each other. And so the being present and really spending a moment and just kind of looking and seeing each other and recognizing that, you're my daughter, and wow, look how beautiful you are, and look how, proud I am of you, and look at all the amazing things that you do, and look at all the gifts that you have, and just spending that moment of just seeing you, because there's a distinction between seeing somebody and looking at them.
Yeah, it's funny because as you were explaining that in the beginning, the eye contact thing, honestly, other than when we do the show, we don't really make eye contact. And we have to, because we have to actually be really engaged to each other's conversation. If I break eye contact with you, it almost is like I'm not listening. Like I stop listening, and I have to constantly be listening specifically for this show. So when I'm at home and I'm doing other stuff and you're talking to me, I can see how disconnected and unengaged
because we're multitasking. Here, we're not multitasking. I mean, besides starting the show and pressing buttons and getting on Facebook or enabling video and all that. But once we get in a dialogue, you and me, we get lost in this zone of just being with each other. This is what being with each other looks like, is eye contact, and I'm hanging on to every word that you're saying, and you're hanging on every word to what I'm saying. I'm not thinking about lunch or what's happening next, and we're just here being with each other, and that's the a dynamic, powerful moment of connecting, and we can create that in our lives. We can create that in our kitchens and our living rooms. Again, the problem is that we have so much on our plate and we're so busy that we have to force ourselves to find the time to go, hey, can you put that down for a minute? I just want to spend some time with you. Or a lot of times I'll say, ask your loved one to go for a walk. Or, hey, let's or help me. Or like a lot of times, parents will say, how do I get my son to throw the trash out? And I'll say, why don't you use it as an opportunity to bond with him? Or look at it as an opportunity to teach him how to throw the trash out, with you being the person that's inviting him to help you. So let's say I have a son that I'm annoyed because he doesn't or hasn't own up to taking that responsibility of throwing the trash out. So instead of being frustrated and scolding him all the time, why don't I try a new tactic? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, Mike, can I get your help? Yeah, what do you need? I need you to help me throw this trash out. Can you hold this down while I pull it out? So, and I don't obviously need him to help me because I'm a master at throwing the trash out. But I get him to invite him to be a part of the process. So he holds the trash, and I over-exaggerate and struggle and pull it out, and then I set it down. I say, okay, I'll hold it down while I tie it. Like tie it, and hey, I need you to help me open the gate. So we walk together, and he opens the door for me, and we're doing it together. So what I'm doing is I'm teaching him how to throw the trash out, not directly, but indirectly. And then along that process, I'm having a conversation with him. So how's school going today? Oh, it was pretty fun. And so now I'm engaging him. And then we get to the door, and I motion with my head like the door, right? I don't have to say anything, just the door. And he keeps talking, and he opens the gate for me, and we get there. Now that he's opened the door for me and the gate, you think he's going to stand there and have me open up the trash can? No, we've already engaged in that, and I've already invited him to be in partnership with me throwing the trash out. So he's continuing to share and open up with me, and he opens the trash, and I throw it in. And when he's done, I do a knuckle pound or a high five and seals up the experience that we had. But for a brief moment in our busy days, we had a moment where we got to share, and we partnered up with something, we teamed up, and we accomplished something. And so the point I'm trying to make is that we can connect with each other in a lot of different ways. We just have to be creative. We got to be mindful. We got to be aware, and we got to decide as parents that I'm responsible to create or give permission to co-create that kind of experience with our kids.
it's really funny because as you're explaining that, I remember when I was younger, we lived at my grandma's house, and my little cousin, Mike, was in charge of throwing the trash out. Now, when he was really young, so he wasn't really into it. Now, my grandpa, he would give him a piece of candy after. So he would go super little. He would go take all the bathroom trash cans out in his, diaper and like run out to the trash can, throw them away, do it all by himself and come back with his little hand out. And my grandpa would give him the candy. And I remember thinking that's so funny because he's now, for the rest of my life, every time he comes over to the house, Mike, can you throw the trash out? Because it was just an experience for him. My grandpa would go out there, hold the trash can open for him. He would throw the trash away, get his piece of candy, and then he'd be like so excited for 2 days later for the trash to fill up again.
Yeah, but also too, when he used to come to our house, I knew he didn't have a dad, and I was kind of like his father figure. I would get excited. He'd come over, and I'd ask him to help me with projects. So he already knew his thing is when he comes over for the weekend or whatever. It's like, hey, Unc,
he had a job to do.
like, what do you got? Like, what do you got? Because to him, it was bonding with an older gentleman that cared about him, that loved him. So it was, and I used that as leverage to find opportunities to have him be a part of. Okay, we're gonna now get up and clean off the leaves from the roof or whatever it is, and that was our time to bond. And I would ask him how he's doing and how's it going at grandma's house and all that. So it's about figuring out how to reinvent yourself in the ability to connect with your kids. You have to be creative and invite them to participate and partner up with you.
Right, because when they get older too, you're gonna have to bond with them in a different way, and that's not gonna be taking the trash out and doing chores.
Absolutely, and that's a challenge I'm having with you guys as young adults. It's like, how do I figure out how to connect with you guys? And maybe we'll talk about that after the break.
We have to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, KHTS.